Welcome to Mindful Daily. I am Nora Rhoades, your Family and Youth Development Agent in Kansas State Research and Extension's Post-Rock District. Today we're going to focus on some of Dr. Gottman's research on how communication can impact our relationships. Specifically, we are going to be talking about communication cues. A cue is essentially an invitation to have a healthy conversation, or to have a conversation at all. It is our response to that cue that determines whether the communication is healthy or not so healthy. There are essentially three ways that we can respond to a cue to have a conversation. We can ignore the cue, we can turn toward that cue, or we can turn away from that cue. Some of these responses are more positive than others. Whether you're in the workplace, or you're communicating with your family, or with just a group of friends, it's important to consider your communication strategy, and in particular, your patterns. So the communication strategies that you practice day in and day out. It's those patterns that are going to determine whether your communication strategies are helpful or harmful for that relationship. Let's analyze our three opportunities to respond to a conversational cue in a workplace setting. Here you're going to see me having a conversation with one of my professional peers in the workplace. My peer is inviting me to have a conversation about an interesting idea and research that she's been involved in. My response is going to determine how positive this conversation is going to not only impact our work in the workplace, but also impact our relationship as a whole. Though these examples are workplace focused, you can definitely see how they correlate into your home environment with maybe your family or loved ones, or also into your relationships with friends and others.
Hey Nora, I have an idea I want to talk to you about. I've been doing some research and I have a programming idea that I think would really have a powerful impact on our youth.
Yeah, actually let's talk about how the meetings went last week and see about how maybe our agenda's objectives were met.
Okay.
Here we see an example where I ignore through my response. My coworker invites me to have this open conversation and to discuss a new idea. My nonverbals kind of immediately turn away. I'm not really being an attentive listener. I'm not engaged in understanding. I'm simply looking at our agenda and thinking of what I thought we were going to accomplish during our conversation. You can ignore someone through behaviors, subtle behaviors as you just witnessed. But you can also ignore someone through the words that you use. I simply changed the subject. I did not even give my peer the time of day. You could tell I just brushed off everything that was important to them to focus on what was important to me. I ignored it altogether.
Hey Nora, I have an idea that I want to talk about. I've been doing some research and I have an idea that I think would really, for programming, that would really have a powerful impact for our youth.
I just don't even know why we're thinking about new programs right now. Our budget's so tight, our staff time, we are just like at full capacity. I just think it's a waste of time to be thinking about new programs. I don't know. I just don't think it's a good idea. Here we see a communication cue in which I respond to the invitation to have a conversation in a negative way. I don't ignore the invitation. I definitely recognize through my actions and words that I heard what the individual wanted to talk about, what my peer was really interested in talking about. But I was not interested in hearing all of their side of the story. I wasn't interested in understanding their opinion, recognizing that their experience is valuable. I definitely focused it on my opinion, and it was very negative. So I basically squashed their opinion and made sure that my opinion and thoughts were moved higher on the pedestal than theirs. What this shows is a lack of respect for my workplace relationship, and you can correlate this to relationships for you at home or out in your community. The way that I responded is I turned away. I turned against that communication cue. I lowered my level of respect for the individual through my actions and my words, and you could tell that the conversation was over. There was no sense of willingness to understand each other and to come up with a joint decision, a joint solution, and a joint plan of action that is best for each other, but also the group as a whole.
Hey Nora, I have an idea I want to run by you. I've been doing some research and I have this idea, a programming idea that I think would have a powerful impact for our youth.
Awesome. So today, let's talk about that, as well as talk about how last week's meetings went. And I just am so excited. I love your enthusiasm. I want to hear about your research, and I want to hear about the idea. Just makes me so glad to hear that you're interested in providing our youth with really impactful programs. We once again see another example of the same workplace conversation. This time, when my coworker invites me into this conversation about the interesting idea and research that she's been thinking about, my response is more positive than the other two examples that we have witnessed. Instead of turning away from the conversation or ignoring the conversation, ignoring the cue altogether, I am turning toward the opportunity to understand and to discuss this topic. If this is a pattern in my everyday communication strategies, our relationship's going to be very open and honest. It doesn't mean that everyone's always going to get their way, but it does mean that we are respectful for each coworker and that we are going to be listening to understand instead of listening to simply respond or check something off the list. You can tell through my nonverbal cues that I am being attentive, I'm being positive, and I'm truly interested in hearing the opinion and experience of my friend. She is more interested in opening up and sharing with me. Turning toward a conversational cue definitely creates a more positive environment in which both parties' opinions and experiences can be heard and understood, and then you can work together to come up with a compromise or to develop a solution or a plan of action that benefits the whole instead of just one. If you negatively respond to a communication cue every once in a while, that's okay. We as humans tend to sometimes respond with our emotions versus our thoughts, and we need to accept that that is something that we need to work through in our relationships. However, if you can think about your daily interactions with a particular individual, maybe it's a coworker, a sibling, a parent, a best friend, or just a community member, think about how the majority of your responses to their communication cues are. If they're negative, you're really harming that relationship. There's a lack of respect there, most likely, and there's a lack of willingness, a lack of comfort to be able to come to someone with needs, wants, and just to share everyday happenings with each other. Now, if your consistent pattern is more positive, you are more likely to feel like you live in a safe environment, you work in a safe environment, one where your ideas and your skill set is appreciated, and that you can bring what those skills are to the table. You can openly talk about them, and then you're going to be able to have a conversation to come up with a plan of action. Thank you for joining me for Mindful Daily today. I'm Nora Rhoades, your Family and Youth Development Agent in Kansas State Research Extension's Post Rock District. I'm here to help you evaluate your relationships and to think about your communication strategies. Together we can come up with an action plan that can help you truly make positive change in your own self so that you can positively impact those around you through your relationships.